really excited to be getting our speaker series going for the fall. We have some really exciting things up and coming. So today, all of you know Dr. Rudolph. He's amazing. Practitioner, not just in chiropractic, but also an expert in the brain, in brain health and concussion syndrome, as well as different therapies that are available for that. So today he's going to be talking about the post-concussion syndrome, the brain and brain stuff. We're going to talk about brain stuff today, which is applicable to everyone because we all have one. So he does offer brain core and a new therapy called Right Eye, which Billy and I are both experiencing right now, and I have found a very huge benefit from personally. As well as Holly Ottmer, who offers brain core here in town, which we're very, very fortunate to be able to access here locally. So if this is something that is of interest to you, you have options for places to go to get help and treatment, and we're very excited about that as well. So we'll turn it over to you, Dr. Ralph, and then will you have time for some Q&A at the end?
Yeah. Yep.
And then,
that's the question.
okay, there's a question. And then before I forget, October 27th, 9 a.m., we have a very special guest coming, my good friend, another chiropractor, coming from all the way from Minneapolis, Dr. Beth Westy. She's a female hormone expert, and she teaches women specifically how to eat for their cycle and to make lifestyle hacks for whatever season of life you're in. So whether you are in regular season of life, menopause or postmenopause, you will find material in that talk that is applicable to you. She's also going to be reading her book, and we're going to have a tilted tulip here again with coffee and treats. So thank you to Erin for coming as well, and Dr. Rudolph, I'll turn it over to you.
Just a quick bio for those of you that don't know me, and just a quick review for those of you that do. I'm originally from North Dakota. I grew up in a small town south of Dawson. I got my chiropractic degree from Northwestern in Bloomington, Minnesota. Got my functional neurology status, if you want to call that, about 3 years later after I graduated. I continued on with that, doing neurofeedback, and now I'm doing Right Eye. So there's a lot of neurological stuff that I found over the years that as the information comes out, you start to learn more and more things about what we can do, more and more how can we figure out what is actually going on with somebody, proper evaluations, then proper treatments. Why I focus primarily on concussions is I have had several concussions over the years. Remember, concussions are a variation of a traumatic brain injury, so it's in the same category as strokes and aneurysms. I mean, concussions are injuries to your brain just like those are. But I want to go over a few myths with you about concussions that have been out into the public arena, into society, and in the media that are, we know, wrong to think about a concussion along these lines. So, remember, these are myths, so this is true and false. Guess what it's going to be. So, all right, so loss of consciousness. If you do not get knocked out, you do not have concussion. True or false? False. Actually, 90% of the people that get a concussion never lose consciousness. Went to the doctor, had an MRI, my CAT scan done, came back fine, I must be okay. True or false?
False.
False, extremely false. Very misleading. Imaging can show you if you have a brain bleed or a skull fracture. It cannot show you the microscopic damage done to your neurons after a concussion. In order to have concussion, you need a direct blow to the head. True or false? False. Extremely false. More often than not, it's the whiplash action that happens to your head, not the direct blow to your head that causes the concussion. I'll get into that more in just a few minutes. If after a week my symptoms are gone, I must be okay. True or false?
False.
Week 1 is the beginning of the recovery. It takes at least a month for you to fully recover from a concussion. How often do kids or athletes or people go back to work or school? Just other couple things. Didn't have time to make slides for them, but they did for phones. Just a couple of quick stats to review. In the last decade, concussions in teenagers ages 14 to 19 has increased by 200%.
Since when? What was the date?
Last decade. Last decade. 19% people that participate in contact sports will have a concussion. Not if, they will. And the last one I already told is that 90% of people that have concussions never lose consciousness. I think everybody had one of these sheets. Right. Let's take that sheet out, we're going to go over that. So just, you don't necessarily need to raise your hand, head nods work too. Slide to the back of the room so somebody else sees you nodding or raising your hand. But how many people in here have been in a car accident at 25 miles an hour or faster? Why do we use 25 miles an hour as the marker? That's the fastest a person. Usain Bolt can run 24 miles an hour. He's the fastest person we know. That's the fastest a human being's framework and body is designed to deal with that much force. Anything greater than that, you're going to get hurt. So anything over 25 miles per hour in a car, it's not a question of if you got a concussion, it's how bad and if you know that you got to treat it or not. All right, contact sports, anybody? I'm sure everybody's played some sort of contact sport. I mean, we all had 5 ed in high school.
Dodgeball?
Right? Contact sports. Slipped on ice. Never that doesn't happen around here, right? Fall out of a tree, bucked off a horse, wrestled with your siblings when you were a kid. This is what I love asking. Because people, they have to think back and say, oh yeah, we used to wrestle in our room, but if we got hurt, we wouldn't tell mom and dad. Why? Because you don't want to get in trouble. So these people have had concussions, never knew it, never got evaluated, never got it treated. Right, so when we have concussions, there are major 3 areas that are affected when we have that type of blow to the head. No laughing at my brain. Okay, this is looking at the side, right? When we experience a force, that causes our head to rock back and forth. Your brain is not anchored down inside your skull. It's free floating in there. And so as your head moves forward, your brain comes forward. When your head stops, your brain keeps going. It hits the front or the back, whatever direction that was going. But because it's free floating, it goes forward and then it rebounds and it comes back. And a lot of times that's what's called a counter-coup action of the brain. The backwards action of the rebound, that is the part that gets damaged more than the actual direction that your head was going. The challenge to all this is your brain is not a square, right? It's round. It's a globe inside that. So when it goes back and forth, it just doesn't go back and forth. It rotates. It spins in there. So now you can have your head going one way, it rotates back and spins and hits on the opposite side. This is all damaging the outer part of your brain, or the cortex. This is where we see like potential bruising or bleeding. We'll see it on the outside of your brain. It doesn't tell us anything about what's going on the inside. So the secondary thing that happens is almost 90%, if not 100% of people that have concussions have some sort of vestibular issue. Their balance gets put off. Your brainstem is where your vestibular system and your cerebellum route in to your brainstem to go up to your brain. Your vestibular system is what keeps your balance, coordination, eye movements, all those things are coordinated by that system. When your brain twists, it takes your brainstem and it twists it. So now everything that's connected into your brainstem gets a torque action put to it. Now it's just a matter of where is the imbalance at. You can't get away from having a concussion, not having some sort of balance issue, or eye movements. That's what got me looking into the Right Eyes program, which we'll talk about later, is be able to look to see how is a person's eye mechanics affected by the fact that they had this head injury that was never properly evaluated, that over the years can lead into more and more problems that don't seem significant or affect. It's connected back to this head injury that they had. Now the other component, this is the one that really seems like how can this ever be connected, but I'm going to show you right now. You will potentially have hormonal issues after you have a head injury. If you draw a line from your ear in and your nose back, where they connect is where your pituitary gland sits. Your pituitary gland is what controls all of your hormones, okay? But, if you take that brain, cut it in half, there's a little thing called the sella turcica. This is where your pituitary sits. And it's called a pituitary stalk that comes up from here, and this bone encases and protects your pituitary gland. Kind of a good idea, right? If this thing controls all your hormones, you probably want to protect it. The problem is, when your brain twists, this twists underneath. And now your pituitary gland can get damaged due to the fact you had this concussion. Now, it's not a big change at the moment, but as you restrict the information and the access to your pituitary gland, your hormones start to shift. And now over time, when you should have estrogen, you don't. Or you should have too much. Or if you need testosterone, you can't get it anymore. And what do we see people that are getting in their 50s and 60s and 70s? All sorts of hormone problems. People in their 50s and 60s and 70s, those generations, they're the ones that first took place or first had contact sports that were organized. Right? They had organized sports, football, basketball, baseball, track. Undergoing potential head injuries during these contact sports never get evaluated. Here they are 40, 50, 60 years later, and they're developing problems potentially from a head injury that they had decades ago, but it took that much time to develop into something that we consider to be a symptom. The concept of the idea is this. You're driving down the road and you hit a pothole with your front tire. The front tire gets out of alignment, right? It starts to wobble. But you don't notice it because you're inside the car and it's not that big of a wobble at the time. But as you keep driving your car, what happens to the tire? It starts to wobble more and more and more until eventually the car starts shaking. And the next thing you know, you're inside the car once again and the whole cab is moving around and shaking on you. You're trying to move the dials and steer the wheel and you're trying to fix stuff on the inside of the cab. But where's the problem at? It's this tire. But if you never look at the tire, you're always trying to fix stuff in the cab and it never gets better. Because as soon as you stop doing what you're doing here, it comes back. It's the same thing with these head injuries. If you do not evaluate and treat them right away when they happen and make them stabilize, they will become less and less stable over time. I just read an article the other day where 40-year-olds are starting to experience mental degeneration issues at 40. I mean, this stuff is not supposed to happen until you're like in your 90s. And it's happening decades earlier and earlier and earlier. Alzheimer's, dementia, you didn't hear about that stuff 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Now you hear about it every day. Most likely, stuff like this. Any questions so far?
Talking about your brain getting shifted, do you mean it stays that way, twisted?
No, it's
Or
it'll,
just because of the twist.
because of the twist.
causes
Yeah, because which I'll get into in my PowerPoint in just a few minutes, but your neurons are not connected within your brain, right? There's none of your neurons actually touch or connect to each other. We have all these supportive cells that keep the neurons in suspension, but they never actually touch. Because if neurons touch, they would short out. Right? Because they're electrical in nature, so if you put two electrical ends together, it shorts them out. So in between each of the cells, there's a little gap. And that's where neurotransmitters live. Right? That's this. The neuron fires a signal, there's a gap, sends the neurotransmitters across to another cell, that does the same thing, but your neurons never actually touch each other, which is kind of interesting fun to think about. So yes, we'll talk about those support systems and things, because in addition to the hormonal problems and the vestibular problems, within 6 hours of having a head injury, you potentially start having leaky gut syndrome, because your brain stem has been damaged, and where your cranial nerve that controls your digestive system sits, if there's enough torque on that, it stops sending its signal down, and everything starts to open up in your gut. So all of a sudden now, and then if you do not treat that properly, now for the first 7 days potentially after you've had a head injury, everything you eat is leaking into your bloodstream and getting up into your brain. And now you start to develop all these sorts of potentially allergies and stuff over time, because your brain gets exposed to those things, it starts developing antibodies against them, developing into allergies. So it's very interesting. You see people that have head injuries, they'll have digestive problems, they'll have issues where their skin starts to rash on them because their liver starts to shutting down, they'll have constipation or diarrhea, because once again, their gut starts slowing down because their brainstem was injured. But we don't make the connection. Okay, we think they're totally separate symptoms, and they're not. They're not separate symptoms. You can't disconnect everything like we try to do in medicine and stick it in a box. It's all interconnected. Excuse me. Any other questions?
It seems hard to believe that an accident at like 25 or 30 miles an hour could do that level of damage. Can you explain how that's possible?
It gets into it's you're in a car, right? You got your strap down here, right? Shoulder strap here, but your head's not strapped down. I mean, NASCAR guys are smart enough to strap their heads against the seat, but we don't do that with ourselves in our cars. And once you get going, past 25 miles an hour, your body's physiology is not designed to deal with forces harder than that. If it was, we should be able to run 50 miles an hour, right? Because our frame will be able to take on that stress, but we can't. Fastest person is, once again, Usain Bolt runs 24 miles an hour. Most of us will be lucky if we get to 12 miles an hour, right? And at 12 miles an hour, you're going to take how much more stress? Less, because your frame is less able to take on that amount of force. So now as your head, once again, is whipping back and forth, and your neck muscles aren't very strong, that's what helps stabilize your head against the movement. And they see a higher level of concussions in people with weaker neck muscles or smaller neck muscles. So what's the sport that has the highest level or the highest increase of concussions right now?
Soccer.
What? Women's soccer, exactly. Women can kick the ball just as hard as a guy can. And soccer balls aren't soft, they're hard. And so when those things come whizzing in and they go to stop it, there's a lot of concussive force that comes through their head. And if their neck muscles don't absorb it, their head does. Right? I have 2 soccer players right now. It took them 1 hit each. And one has developed dysautonomia, and the other one, dysautonomia, basically your autonomic system is messed up to the point where this individual, when she's in school, she passes out because it's too much sensory input for her. The other individual had all sorts of symptoms as far as eating and sleeping and not being able to pay attention and ringing his ears and all these different things. He's actually gotten better as well, but he was just 1 hit in soccer. He had gone up and took a header where one guy came and hit him from the side here, and the ball came and hit him here in a split second. He got down and kept playing. They got off the field, they subbed in and out. He remembers having his head, you could feel, knew that his ears were ringing, but didn't think anything of it. Then it was a couple days later, all the stuff started to appear. And it was, once again, one hit. It's timing, intensity, where you're at in life at that point. I mean, all these things are what the variables that make it whether you can get hit 5 times and never suffer anything, or get suffered 1 time at slow speed and you're the one that has problems for 20 years. That's the variability of it. The science, the physiology, all that other stuff, that's baseline. But once again, your individuality is the part that makes it whether or not you're going to have bigger problems later on or right away or what the case is. The big thing is just knowing. And so that's where I'm not, you take a step back, I'm not against contact sports. Play them all you want. But don't be ignorant to where the fact that if something happens, you keep doing stuff that's going to make it worse. Right? At least know the signs of things that can happen. Tell your kids if they're playing sports and they get hit and they get numb or tingling in the arms and legs, you get off the field and tell your coach. Don't try and get back in there and play when you're dealing potentially with a concussion for sure. But if worst comes to worst, they've basically broken their spine somewhere and they've got a spinal cord injury that they keep running on, you're going to get paralyzed for what, 5 minutes in a football game, really? And at least be smart enough to know that you need to do things to keep yourself safe. Boys, play all you want. I played football, paid the price for it, but I played it and loved it. So, any other questions? This is the best part of talking. This stuff is, get to tell you what you want to know. If there aren't any questions, I'm going to put the PowerPoint up on here. Some of it's review. Other parts of it will be new stuff. I'm going to have the force to sit there because I just moved my office and the stuff that helps me click my try to dim these lights just